And Philip was asleep and everyone was already asleep. Everyone's off Slack and I'm just like, no one's green on Slack right now.
I definitely had a moment in high school when I didn't know if I was bisexual, lesbian, or straight. Being single for so long, the dating app era, swiping and not getting matches, whatever, you question your sexuality again.
And a quote that really helps me is, "This too shall pass." And that reminds me that whatever is happening, whatever negative state I'm feeling, it will pass.
Welcome to another episode of Dear ABG, where we answer your listener-submitted questions. If you don't know us by now, we are ABG, Asian Boss Girl, a podcast for the modern-day Asian American woman. My name is Helen.
I'm Janet.
And I'm Mel.
And before we begin, we're going to ask each other a random fun question. All right, today's question of the day is, what sound do you love the most?
So the first thing that came to mind for me is, you know, when it's like really, really early in the morning, like dawn, and you hear birds chirping?
Oh, that's a really good one.
And that, because it reminds me of when I was really, really little, I used to get up with my grandma to go walking around like 5 or 6 a.m. And that was obviously, it was a habit that she had. So from a very young age, I always really, really love like the first thing you do when you wake up, you know, in the morning and you hear the birds outside.
Aww. There's actually birds that fly through my window only in the morning. And only if I get up early enough. And they're always just like hanging out on like the little windowsill right outside. Aww. I don't know why. I'm like, why don't you pick my window?
It makes sense your fear.
They're like, let me in, let me in.
I love the sound of onions or garlic hitting a sizzling pan on medium to high heat.
Ooh, yes.
I just love the sizzle sound. I'm like, yes, I'm about to cook something. It's gonna smell so good. And that sounds like music to my ears.
I have two sounds. So I have Shopify on my phone. And so anytime you purchase something, I hear a little cha-ching from my phone. And I get a little sense of just like, yay! Because of both like, yes, we're making money, but at the same time, I'm like, cool, someone wants to buy a piece of us from something that we've created. And so it feels like we're like growing every time I hear the sound. So yes, AsianBossGirl.myShopify.com if you would like to purchase something and make me happy. But I think the other sound that I really, really like hearing is my niece, Riley, every time she says auntie.
Oh my God, that is...
So my sister just sent me this sound from Riley.
Auntie.
Riley has one of the sweetest voices too.
Yeah, I am.
It's very like, auntie. Just so like your heart just melts.
Yeah.
Our first listener submitted question comes from Celeste. That's a beautiful name. From Montreal. Celeste asks, what is something you do or tell yourself when you are feeling stressed?
I am stressed out all the time. I think I'm someone that, I stress myself out. That's just the kind of person I am. The thing I do is I literally will I close my eyes and I'll take like 5 deep breaths. And then I always remember this quote from Headspace, the meditation app I use. And it says, there will always be blue skies. So I think I just picture this image of like, I think when you're stressed, the clouds kind of come in and kind of shade or cover up the blue skies, but underneath it, it's always there. So I just remember that quote and just kind of note that and just continue with my day. If you're stressed, take a deep breath, close your eyes, and remember, there will always be blue skies. How about you ladies?
Well, first, stressed spelled backwards is dessert. So when you're stressed, think about dessert. We've been working on ABG, as you all know. This is our full-time job now, and we definitely put in more than 40 hours a week each, and we've definitely felt stress at times running our own business and trying to pursue this dream and make it a reality. And so I remember there was this one point where I was working on editing a video for a client, and it was like 3 a.m. and it wasn't one that involved a lot of like creative freedom. So it wasn't like the best video to edit. And Philip was asleep and everyone was already asleep. Everyone's off Slack and I'm just like, no one's green on Slack right now. But I just reminded myself, like, I've been in these situations many times before at my old job, and it was for something that I didn't feel as passionately about. So I always remind myself that it's been worse, or it could be worse. And I think that leads to it's something that I've been doing since like therapy, is practicing gratitude, which is honestly a life-changing thing. I know it's like super woo-woo, it's like, oh, shut up, you know, whatever, but like this shit like it works, you know. It's a muscle that you actually need to practice so that when you are in a really dark time, whether you think about the blue skies, whether you think about it could be worse, you put things into perspective, and it honestly is like a life-changing thing. As I know, okay, woo 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 woo, but be a wang wang. But yeah, I think that's how I sort of get myself out of stressful moments. How about for you, Janet?
Those are both great points, and similar to both of you ladies, I take a moment and put things in perspective. And a quote that really helps me is, "This too shall pass." And that reminds me that whatever is happening, whatever negative state I'm feeling, it will pass.
Yes.
So, you know, I think just keep that in perspective. No matter how bad something gets, like, it's not going to be permanent. The other thing that I have found really helpful, I don't do it so much now because we're kind of more indoors, but in the past, if I'm like really stressed out and hitting a point where I feel like I can't quite push through a problem, I'll go for a run or I'll do something physical, right? I think that when you like step away from what it is that you're doing, and even if it's not an immediate problem, if it's a bigger, longer term life problem, like just increase of those like happy hormones in your body will definitely make you feel better. The other thing, when we talk about woo-woo things, right? Meditation. Any type of practice that you do, whether it's gratitude, meditation, those things, sometimes you can do it in the moment, but also it's just like it builds up over time so that in the moment, maybe 1 out of 5 days that you feel heavy stress, you'll notice that it's working.
Right. I feel like I'm nodding my head off here. Good point. Yeah.
All right, so our next question comes in the form of voicemail, so I'll play it right now.
Hi, ABG. I'm a college student from Hawaii, and I just wanted to say that I love the podcast, and I've binged pretty much every season. I was wondering if you guys can maybe talk a little bit or do an episode on sexuality and maybe heteronormativity for Asian American households. I'm a college student, like I said, and I've struggled with my sexuality even though I'm in a straight relationship. So if you could touch on this subject, I think that would be a really great topic for discussion. All right, thank you. Bye.
This is a really great question, and I think it's something that it's a challenging topic for a lot of young people to talk about, especially people of Asian cultural background. If you guys haven't already, you can check out, we have 2 episodes, episodes 66 and 68, where we invited our good friends Anna and Justin to come on and talk about their sexuality, who both identify as queer. I can say from personal experience growing up, I consider myself heterosexual, but I think it's very normal in your young teenage years to kind of question, right? And I definitely went through that phase sometimes where I would think about it. And even in my later adult years, because when you go through long periods where you're single, and I feel like a lot of people can feel me in today's dating app world, you start to think like more deeply about your companionship and love and sexuality in general, right? So it's completely normal, and I can say that don't feel alone in questioning, because I've definitely questioned too. I've arrived at the place where I feel confident in my heterosexuality, but it's normal, I think, to kind of wonder.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Jay. I think within my household, we barely even talked about relationships. Like, my parents barely talked about even like boys with me, but even when they did talk about potential boyfriend, like, do you have a boyfriend? It was always like a boy instead of girl, right? So I think it was sort of the expectation that there is heteronormativity, which is a difficult word to say, but that was the expectation in our household without ever like questioning it, right? And I could see that someone growing up in that type of a household, where especially when you're young and you're not certain about who you are, your identity, what you stand for, and someone is feeding these messages to you, it's really difficult for you to just be comfortable with yourself and in your own skin. And I'm sure there's a lot of bullying also when a little bit of your real self sort of like starts coming out. I think also, if we think about the stereotypical image of what a gay person is within white culture, is usually a white male, right? So even then, apart from family, within society, it is even more difficult because you don't have your family support and you don't have society support. So I can see how that is very difficult. I am also heterosexual, so I can't speak to this, but I will say that that episode did open my eyes a lot to what that struggle is like for an Asian person. Anna, she grew up in a religious family, so that was a very unique story that she has on her end. And Justin is a gay twin and his brother is straight. So that was also very interesting. I hope that, maybe you can relate to one of those two stories, but I would definitely check out those episodes.
All right, so for my answer, I don't want to echo too much, but I do agree with both these ladies. Janet, I feel you. Being single, I think sometimes you start questioning your sexuality again. And I definitely had a moment in high school when I didn't know if I was bisexual, lesbian, or straight. But I came to the conclusion that I am also heterosexual. But again, I think being single for so long in the dating app era, swiping and not getting matches, whatever, you question your sexuality again. And I think especially nowadays, people are more open and honest in talking about fluidity of sexuality, that I think it's more accepted, that you can, kind of still be curious, still trying to figure things out, still be in a straight relationship, and maybe be curious about what it's like to be with someone of the same gender, right? I think in moments where you feel curious and maybe you don't feel super safe talking to your boyfriend about this, find a friend you feel really comfortable confiding in. Like, I have a friend where I know, hey, I can talk about anything, there's no judgment, and if it's even my sexuality, I know this person will be very open and understand where I'm coming from. So maybe find that friend for you to kind of just say, hey, this is something that's going on in my mind? Have you questioned this before? Are you questioning it now? So just find that sacred person you could go to.
And that's the end of today's episode of Dear ABG. If you guys would like to leave us a question or a voicemail, you can do so in the details in the description below.
If you haven't checked out the most recent episode of the podcast, you can find us at Asian Bossper on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all the other podcasting platforms. And we'll catch you guys next time on another episode of Dear ABG. Bye!
If you don't know us by now, we fucking eat our hair.
Our first listener submitted question comes from Celeste. That's a really pretty name. From Montreal, Quebec.
Quarterback. Quarterback.